You know that feeling when an emotion just hits you out of nowhere and it doesn't make any sense? Maybe it's a flash of anger or a wave of sadness, or even just this weird numbness that makes you stop and think, wait, why am I feeling this way? Well, today, we're going to get into a story that starts with that exact question. It's a story that was born from a really deep personal loss, and it ends up taking us on this scientific journey, right into the heart of what makes us, well, us.
So these are the opening words from neuroscientist Dean Burnett, and you can just feel the weight in them, right? His whole exploration of our emotional brain, it didn't start in a lab with test tubes and scanners. Nope. It started from a place of real personal tragedy, one that forced him to look at his own field of study in a way he never, ever expected. And really, this is the question that's at the heart of this whole thing. It's something we've all probably wondered about. Why can grief feel so weird, so confusing? In those moments of our deepest sorrow, why are our feelings so unpredictable, so messy? It just doesn't seem to follow any rules. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so our story really kicks off with a riddle. And this isn't some abstract academic puzzle. This one is deeply, deeply personal. It's all about what happens when the emotions you think you're supposed to feel just aren't there.
So let's set the scene. It's the spring of 2020. You remember it, right? The world is locking down. Everything is chaotic and uncertain. And right in the middle of all that, the author's father gets COVID-19 and tragically passes away. And because of the lockdowns, he's completely isolated, can't even go to the hospital. He's bracing himself for this just tidal wave of grief, but it doesn't come.
Yeah, instead of that profound sadness he was expecting, he just felt numb. And this is what's so wild. He's a neuroscientist. This is his whole world. He understands the mechanics of emotion, but his own emotional response was just a total blank. So this became the riddle he had to solve. Why wasn't he feeling the way he was supposed to feel? So to even begin to solve this riddle, he had to go all the way back to the beginning. He had to ask a really fundamental question. What even are emotions? And it turns out the answer doesn't just start in our minds. It starts deep inside our physical bodies.
And this is where things get really interesting. For centuries, you had thinkers like the ancient Stoics who saw emotions, they called them passions, as these dangerous, wild forces that were a threat to reason, something to be suppressed. But modern science, it completely flips the script. It says, no, emotions aren't some mystical flaw. They are tangible, physical processes happening right inside of you.
And if you think about it, our own language kind of proves we've always known this deep down, right? We talk about heartbreak, we get gut feelings. We can be breathless with excitement or have belly laughs. These aren't just clever metaphors. They are clues, telling us that our feelings are deeply, physically real.
So this all leads us to a really clear scientific definition. Emotions, they're not just these abstract ideas floating around in your head. They are real, physical events. They literally alter your heart rate, they change the chemical makeup of your tears, they flood your body with hormones. They are as real and tangible as the blood pumping through your veins.
All right, so now that we've established that emotions are real, physical things, we can start to tear down one of the biggest myths about the human mind. This idea that there's some kind of epic battle going on between our cold, hard logic and our messy feelings.
You've seen this a million times in sci-fi, right? You know the type, the super logical alien or the AI that's way smarter than us because it doesn't have messy emotions. The whole idea is that our feelings are basically a bug, a glitch in our programming that holds our brilliant logical minds back.
Well, it turns out that whole idea is completely wrong. It's a false choice.
Here's the big plot twist. Our ability to think rationally, to be logical, it doesn't just coexist with our emotions, it actually depends on them. Seriously, without our feelings, our logic would be totally paralyzed. Emotions are what give us the why. They motivate us to do things, to make decisions, even to want to learn things in the first place.
And this is just a fantastic example of that in action. The astrophysicist Katie Mack noticed that some of the most logical people you could possibly imagine, cosmologists, would actively look for other theories about how the universe will end. Why? Because the most likely scientific answer, the heat death of the universe, just felt really depressing to them. Think about that. Even at the highest levels of science, our feelings are in the driver's seat.
Okay, so if our thinking, our logic, is so tangled up with our emotions in the present moment, what does that mean for our past? What does it mean for our memories?
And this question brings us right back to our author and his personal riddle. Remember? Why did all these happy memories of his dad suddenly become so painful? Well, the answer is all about how our brain doesn't just store the past, it feels the past.
See, what he realized was that these memories he'd treasured his whole life, laughing with his dad, all these moments of pure joy, they suddenly felt different. They were now soaked in sadness. The facts of the memory were the same, but the feeling of that memory, it had been totally rewritten.
So let's peek under the hood at how this works in the brain. When anything happens to you, two key parts of your brain get to work. First, you've got the hippocampus. Think of it like a journalist, just recording the facts, who, what, where. But then, right alongside it, you have the amygdala. The amygdala is like an editor that slaps a sticky note on that memory, an emotional tag that says, hey, pay attention, this one's important.
And boom, here it is. This is the solution to the riddle. Our memories aren't like dusty old files locked away in a cabinet. They're more like living, breathing things. And a new, really powerful emotional experience, like grief, can act like a time traveler. It can go back to those old memories and stick a brand new emotional tag on them. So the facts of what happened don't change, but the feeling, the whole emotional color of that memory can be changed forever.
So, where does all this leave us? I mean, if we can't really control our emotions, and they have the power to literally rewrite our past, how are we supposed to navigate life? Well, the end of this journey is all about a really powerful shift in thinking.
The author comes up with this just perfect metaphor to describe it. He says it was like being an expert mechanic who knows every single part of a car, but he's trapped inside that car, and it's speeding down a hill with no brakes. All his knowledge about how the engine works couldn't stop it. The only thing he could do was grip the wheel and try to steer. And that, right there, was the breakthrough. He realized he couldn't fix his grief. He couldn't just suppress these messy, confusing feelings. His goal had to change. It wasn't about solving a problem anymore. It was about understanding what was happening. Seeing it all as just a core part of being human.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's pretty simple, but really powerful. Our emotions aren't a bug in the system. They're a core feature. They're not something to overcome. They are essential for thinking, for remembering, for connecting with other people. And maybe true wisdom isn't about trying to control them, but about learning to accept them and navigate their complex, powerful, and sometimes really confusing reality.
And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. If emotions are this essential, this woven into the very fabric of how we think and remember, what's the real cost when we try to ignore them? What happens when a world so often tells us to just push them down and get on with it?